The prospects for peace in Ukraine have been dealt a fresh blow. Russia has accused Ukraine of firing drones at one of President Vladimir Putin's residences. Kiev denied the allegations, calling them a lie aimed at undermining efforts to end the war. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov claimed that Ukraine fired as many as 91 drones at Putin's official residence in the Novgorod region. Lavrov said all drones were shot down by the Russian air defenses, but he did not elaborate or provide evidence of the attack. Now, Ukraine has dismissed this allegation. President Zelensky called the Russian claims a complete fabrication. He claimed the allegations are designed to undermine the peace process. However, former Russian president and close Putin ally Dmitry Medvedev shifted the blame on Ukraine, claiming that it was Zelensky who was seeking a war. The angry exchanges, including a statement by Russia that it was reviewing its stance in negotiations in response to the attack, have put a fresh question mark on prospects for a peace deal. This comes just a day after US President Trump claimed that the deal was closer than ever after a meeting with Zelensky. Trump said that he informed about the alleged attack by the Russian president during a phone call.
Yeah, I don't like it. It's not good. I heard about it this morning. You know who told me about it? President Putin told me about it. Early in the morning, he said he was attacked. It's no good. It's no good. Don't forget, the Tomahawks. I stopped the Tomahawks. I didn't want that. Because we're talking about, it's a delicate period of time. This is not the right time. It's one thing to be offensive, because they were offensive. It's another thing to attack his house. It's not the right time to do any of that, and can't do it. And I learned about it from President Putin today. I was very angry about it.
When asked whether the US intelligence services monitoring that region had any evidence of the alleged attack, Trump said he will find out.
It came out, well, we'll find out. I mean, you're saying maybe the attack didn't take place. It's possible too, I guess. But President Putin told me this morning it did.
Kremlin claimed that Trump was shocked and outraged after being informed about the attack. It also said that in his call with Trump, Putin said he was still committed to the peace process but would revise Russia's negotiating position in light of the alleged drone attack. Russia's accusation comes at a pivotal moment in the peace process. Ukraine says that it has agreed to 90% of a US drafted peace plan, including the issue of post-war security guarantees. But the issue of territory, that still remains unresolved. Russia, which has been advancing on the battlefield for months, has repeatedly called for complete control of the Donbas region. Who is prolonging the war now? To understand this further and to discuss this, I am now going to be joined by two guests. We'll start with Volodymyr Omelian, who's a former major of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, and he's a former Minister of Infrastructure of Ukraine, serving in the role between 2016 and 2019. And later, I'll be joined by Dr. Glenn Deason, who's a Professor of International Relations at the University of Southeastern Norway. Mr. Omelian, let me start. Who is trying to sabotage the peace talks? And I understand you're joining us from Kiev, but these attacks, for Putin to be calling Donald Trump and saying that his residence was attacked, and Ukraine saying that this is a fabrication. Give us your take.
Thank you, sir, for having me. It's a great honor to be with you today. It doesn't really matter what kind of attack we are discussing today, because it's ongoing war, wars that lasts more than 11 years. And Russia attacked Ukraine. We are not fighting Russians at Russian territory. And if we talk about targets, all of them are legitimate. Putin is the same ordinary citizen of Russian Federation killing Ukrainians as Russian soldier or officer. Putin already bombed governmental buildings in Kyiv. I'm not even curious about whether his residence was attacked or not. Putin deserves to die. If we don't go into conspirology that Putin is already dead, and Russian Federation is led by his avatar, some twin brother or man from nowhere. But it's a kind of another theory. But in this particular case, I would like to state very pure thing that unfortunately Russia is not ready to stop. Kremlin is focused and obsessed only with one idea: to restore Russian Empire. It's not the issue of Donbas or Crimea, because today in the morning they said that they still want to have another two regions of Ukraine. If we give them everything, they will take Poland and Baltic states. This is a pure motivation of Russian Federation to restore empire as it used to be. But it's impossible because after 4 years of heavy fights, after Russian invasion in 2022, Russia lost more than 1 million soldiers. They spent all reserves from Stalin times. Russia is most sanctioned country in the world, most toxic one, and they didn't achieve any significant development.
Mr.
They're
Malian.
still in Donbas.
Yeah, Mr. Malian, let me just allow me to come in there. When you don't explicitly deny that Ukraine carried out an attack on the residence of the Russian president a day after a statement comes out from the US saying that peace is very near now, are you saying that Ukraine carried out that attack?
I'm saying that day before the peace negotiations, Russia heavily struck capital of Ukraine with hundreds of drones and missiles. People were killed, electricity was down. Did Russia care about that? No, they do not, because war is ongoing. We have all a right to respond to those attacks. We didn't start this war, but we will definitely end it. Unfortunately, I'm very skeptical about any peace talks. We are
Understood.
supportive of Trump's idea. He is the last leader of the West who wants to talk to Putin. But unfortunately, all other leaders failed to talk to Putin. Russia is the only sponsor of terrorism and oil and gas to the world. That's it.
Mr. O'Malley, stay with me. Let me go across to our other guest now, Dr. Glenn Deason. Of course, a lot that Mr. O'Malley said can be argued, will be contested. But let me go over to Mr. Deason now. Glenn, you heard what Mr. O'Malley had to say. Strong words. Of course, he's speaking from Kiev. He does not deny that Ukraine carried out that attack. He's mentioning the attacks which are still being carried out by the Russian Federation. Give us your assessment of who's trying to sabotage the peace talks, because these attacks that we're discussing are coming less than 24 hours after that announcement that peace is very near.
Well, I think it depends whose peace agreement will be sabotaged, because for Russia, what they will demand in a peace agreement is that Ukraine restores its neutrality. That's the first one, which entails no NATO membership, no NATO troops in Ukraine, and no military equipment, such as missiles being shipped to Ukraine. And also the second would be territorial concessions. This is what they refer to as the so-called Istanbul Plus. So this is what the Russians see as required in a peace for Ukraine, and the Europeans, they see more or less the exact opposite. That is, a peaceful Ukraine needs a powerful deterrent against future Russian attacks. So such a Ukraine would have to be aligned with NATO. If not future membership, then at least the European troops, 800,000 peacetime army, which will then be sustained by NATO, and of course Western intelligence agencies should still be free to operate in Ukraine. And of course, no territorial concessions. As my Ukrainian colleague argued, this would be seen as simply a stepping stone enabling future invasions. So this is why Ukraine especially opposes any pullout from Donbas. Now, I think, we're talking about two different views of what peace entails. Now, I think the US aligns itself closer to the Russian version now. And one can ask why. And I think, well, simply because Russia is winning. And the Americans see that when Ukraine collapses, then having no deal would be disastrous, because then the Russians could dictate all terms. They can take whatever territory they need. And this will be very unfavorable to the United States. So again, so I think what does sabotage entail in this regard? For the Financial Times, they wrote that Zelensky, he realized that he can't really get a deal, but the hope is therefore that the US will line itself closer with him and the Europeans in order to put pressure on Russia and essentially pull the United States into this conflict. So it really depends. I think both the Russians and Ukrainians, of course, they're taking horrible losses and they would like to end this war. The one exception, I would say, would be the European leaders.
Understood.
They've been very open that they don't want an end to the war on favorable terms, because Russia would be strong, it would be angry, and the US would likely reduce its presence in Europe. We've seen this from
Glenn,
Finland. They warn.
Yeah, allow me to come in there. You know, there was more that I wanted to discuss with Mr. Omelyan as well, who was joining us from Kiev. He's unfortunately left us as of now from this discussion, but I tried to pin him down or at least ask him on two separate occasions, did Ukraine carry out that attack? He did not explicitly say no, but he did point out that Russia is carrying out attacks on Kiev, on Ukraine on a daily basis, and those are documented facts. Those are being reported in global media all over. At this point, as you mentioned, that Zelensky is perhaps trying to put pressure on the US. Would an attack on the Russian president's residence put pressure on US to agree to Ukraine's terms? Does that even seem like a feasible plan?
No, I think part of the calculation has been that if Ukraine can inflict some damage on Russia, destroy its energy infrastructure and kill Russian soldiers, then this would signal to the United States that the fight is still ongoing, that Ukraine hasn't lost yet, which means that the US could still have a hope and therefore continue to back Ukraine. The problem is, once it becomes obvious that Ukraine has lost, international backers who will then possibly face the consequences of having backed this proxy war against Russia would then begin to withdraw support. And this is part of the calculation of the Trump administration. They know that the proxy war has been lost, so now they're cutting their losses. They're trying to make some money of this by selling weapons, taking some Ukrainian resources and handing over the whole mess to the Europeans. And they're hoping that if they can convince the Americans that it's still possible to win, then they can get US recommitted. The attacks on Putin's residence, though, this is very strange because it doesn't change anything on the battlefield. It only escalates dramatically. So to me, this seems very counterproductive if you want a peace deal to, in other words, convince the Americans that the war can be won. I think this is more reckless. Again, I, like my Ukrainian colleague, I don't have any information whether or not this is correct, but I do assume that this is correct because there will be ample of evidence which can prove this, and I don't think Russia would have made the claims if this can't be proven. And we also seen earlier this year with the attacks on Russia's nuclear deterrent, which was seemingly done with, shows that the recklessness is really spiraling out of control. So
Understood.
I don't doubt that this would have been done.
All right, Glenn, thanks so much for joining us here on Counterpoint, and also to our other guest who's left us a little prior to the conclusion of this discussion, who was joining us from Kiev. He did not explicitly deny that Ukraine carried out that attack on the Russian president's residence, but this is definitely a major escalation which only takes peace process back by a few steps at least.